They say all politics is local. So is the future of AI development. For growth investors, it's no secret that data centers are the engine driving the artificial intelligence revolution.
AI has now part of infrastructure. And this infrastructure, just like the internet, just like electricity, needs factories.
Hyperscalers like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta platforms are investing hundreds of billions of dollars in new facilities across the country that promise economic prosperity for both big tech and the communities where these data centers will reside. A win-win for everyone, right? Well, there's only one problem. Local opposition to these critical infrastructure projects is mounting.
This is God's land. This is not for something like this to be built on.
Fueled by environmental concerns and a heated dispute over who bears the burden of skyrocketing energy costs.
They need to start protecting our communities and stop lining their own pockets.
This backlash threatens to bottleneck data center expansion, creating delays that could significantly drive up the cost of an already expensive tech revolution. But the ultimate risk is that these data centers go elsewhere, pushing AI's profound economic impact outside the United States.
Whether we like it or not, we're suddenly engaged in a fast-paced competition to build and define this groundbreaking technology that will determine so much about the future of civilization itself.
On this episode of Growth Stories, we look at why more and more towns are saying no thanks to data center projects and how rising opposition could squeeze the margins of tech's biggest players. The promise of artificial intelligence has fueled an unprecedented construction boom and a race to build massive digital factories known as data centers.
I think we're at the beginning of a new build-out, beginning of a new industrial revolution.
The cost of the build-out NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is referring to will be enormous. McKinsey and Company estimates that data centers could require roughly $7 trillion in capital outlays by the end of the decade. If you want proof of the surge in AI spending, just look at recent earnings. Google's capital expenditure shot up by 83% year over year to $24 billion. Microsoft wasn't far behind, hiking its spending by 74% to $35 billion. Meta more than doubled theirs to $19.4 billion, and Amazon is expecting to drop a staggering $125 billion in 2025. Suffice to say, there's a lot of money riding on data centers. But as spending grows, so does the backlash against these facilities. Since 2023, $162 billion in data center projects have been blocked or delayed in the U.S. by a growing wave of local bipartisan opposition. What was once viewed as pedestrian infrastructure is now a national flashpoint. Already this year, local resistance blocked Amazon's planned Project Blue AI campus in Tucson, Arizona. In September, Google pulled a multi-billion-dollar data center plan near Indianapolis just minutes before a city council vote.
And I'd like to announce our intention to withdraw this proposal.
And many more projects are under threat. So there's a couple big reasons why data centers are facing such headwinds lately. Demand for AI is through the roof, and companies can't get these things built fast enough. The rush to build has caught a lot of towns by surprise, and residents feel left in the dark about plans being made in their own backyards. But the big thing that's getting a lot of attention right now has to do with rising electricity bills. So let's dive into the numbers. Right now, there's about 4,300 data centers in the United States. While the exact number of new data centers we'll see built in the next few years is up for debate, one thing is certain. The explosion of new facilities will strain the nation's already fragile energy grid, and that can make electricity a lot more expensive for everyone.
I think we are seeing an unprecedented growth in demand for electricity that has some very serious implications for the power system.
That's Paulina Jaramillo, a professor of engineering and public policy at Carnegie Mellon, where a recent study found that data center and crypto mining electricity demand could increase electricity bills by 8% nationally and as much as 25% in certain regions by 2030. While data centers accounted for 4% of total U.S. electricity use in 2024, Jaramillo says their energy demand could triple by the end of the decade.
It could account for 12% of electricity demand. And that, I think, is the more striking number.
It's not just that we're going to build a lot of data centers, but the ramp up means that we'll be building bigger ones that will use a lot more energy. Right now, a lot of data centers are about 50 to 100 megawatts of electric capacity, but hyperscalers are looking to exponentially increase that to 1 gigawatt in the very near future. I'll let Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg explain.
I mean, just to, I guess, put this in perspective, I think a gigawatt, it's like around the size of like a meaningful nuclear power plant only going towards training a model.
Because of the immense scale required for these AI factories, companies like Meta are expanding their site selection beyond traditional city centers and are now actively targeting more rural areas where they can build next to existing high-capacity power sources. So let's rewind a little bit and talk about how we get our power. In the U.S., electricity markets are managed by 7 independent system operators and regional transmission organizations. These entities use a bid-based system to ensure that the power grid has enough energy to meet demand at the lowest possible cost. Now, approximately 2/3 of the country's total electricity load is delivered in this way. The largest independent system operator is PJM Interconnection, which covers 13 states and the District of Columbia. For 2 consecutive years, PJM has seen record high capacity prices. Now, capacity prices are basically fees paid to power generators to ensure electricity is available when it's needed. Jaramillo says the surge in demand from data centers is a main driver.
So who pays for what? Who pays for the new transmission lines? Who pays for the additional cost of having to operate more expensive power plants? So cost allocation is also a very important issue with serious implications.
Pennsylvania's data center boom and backlash is a good example of these implications. The state is emerging as a major data center hub with $110 billion in recently announced public and private investments. In June, Amazon said it would invest $20 billion on 2 data center complexes in the state that would create 1,250 jobs, a deal Governor Josh Shapiro called a win for the Keystone State.
I'm comforted by the fact that thanks to Amazon, the future of AI is going to run right here through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
But residents are skeptical of what that future looks like. And the aggressive pace of construction is generating significant local opposition, not only to the data centers themselves, but also to the infrastructure required to connect them to the grid. IBD's Claire O'Connor reports from Pennsylvania.
Sugarloaf is a very special place. It's really the last gem that we have left here.
Nestled in the sprawling hills of Luzerne County in northern Pennsylvania sits John Zola's sanctuary.
Many of the areas around us have become industrialized or very city-like, and this is a place where you could just come, and it's so picturesque and so pretty and relaxing. It's just the kind of way of life that we enjoy and everyone who lives here enjoys.
But that tranquility is under threat thanks to a fierce fight that's pitting lifelong residents against developers who want to replace these very green hills with massive data centers.
You know, when you live in America, you never expect someone to come through and take your land against your will. And that's what's happening.
A flood of proposed data centers and related infrastructure projects are encroaching areas like this one where I'm standing here in Luzerne County. A region which once produced the coal that powered the Industrial Revolution offers big tech companies the ideal mix: proximity to a nuclear power plant, major natural gas lines, and easy access to city centers, making it a perfect location for these new digital mines.
Today, the Commonwealth is reclaiming its industrial heritage and taking its place at the forefront of the AI technological revolution.
Zola has lived in Sugarloaf for 17 years, building what he calls his family's paradise. Now his retirement home sits in the path of a proposed 12-mile, 500 kV transmission line that would carry power from the nearby Susquehanna nuclear power plant to future data centers. If this project moves forward, that power line would slice right through this basketball court where John's grandson plays. And the local power company wants to build towers nearly 240 feet tall that would move electricity across 12 miles of Sugarloaf Valley.
So if you could picture, it's going to take off the corner here of the basketball court. So all of this vegetation that you see all the way through would be gone, as well as in this direction. So all of these trees, all of the vegetation, it would just be like a 200-foot wide runway diagonally across my property. And the way their contract is written up, they could go beyond that if they feel it's necessary. So they could enter your property anywhere they want, cross over wherever they want to get to their right-of-way. They don't necessarily have to stay on their right-of-way. Now, how wrong is that?
Not only is Zola's property under threat, but his energy costs have also skyrocketed. And he's not alone. All Pennsylvania residents served by PJM experienced an average 12% jump in their electricity bills over the last year. That's a dramatic jump, more than double the 5% average increase seen across the rest of the country. And despite a recent agreement between the grid operator and Governor Josh Shapiro to cap certain electricity price hikes, for many local residents, there is no end in sight to this financial squeeze. So have you noticed any difference in your electricity bills at all?
Oh, yeah. Our electric bills went up 23%. And this is just the beginning, because as more data centers go in, more transmission lines are going to be needed.
And Zola says those transmission lines will be paid for by the ratepayers.
There's a lot of people in this world living on fixed incomes or low incomes, and God forbid they have electric heat in their house. They're going to have to make choices. Like, do I have heat? Or do I have food? Or do I have medicine? So they're putting people in a really bad position, and here's the worst part of it. When a handful of organizations, corporations, will benefit greatly from this. And the lion's share of the people are going to suffer. That's not how human beings should be treated.
And that's why Zola helped launch the Alliance to Stop the Line, uniting neighbors to fight the proposed high-voltage power line and stand up for residents who feel ignored.
We need to all be a team and be together and work on this for one common goal.
Down the road, Sugarloaf resident Annie Vinatieri says she and her son are also caught in the middle between progress and the preservation of their community.
We understand development has to happen. We understand the need for data centers, but the people also need to be considered in it too. We have a wonderful life, and this is incompatible with what most middle and working class Americans want as their quality of life.
With her home close to the proposed route, Vinatieri fears the damaging health and environmental consequences data centers and their supporting infrastructure will have on her family and neighbors.
I would characterize what's going on in our town as an onslaught. It's just really come out of the blue for us, and it's a onslaught of major industry, grid build out, transmission lines, data center developers. That's all been happening very rapidly here.
And the situation is further complicated by Pennsylvania's status as one of the largest net suppliers of energy to other states, second only to Texas. This imbalance fuels resentment among locals who feel they are subsidizing national power infrastructure without receiving commensurate benefits.
So not only are we exporting all of this electricity, they're then turning around and telling us that, oh no, there's going to be grid instability, we need more. They're creating a problem we didn't ask for in our area, and they're creating a false solution for it. So that's what we have a problem with.
To win local approval, developers pitch data center projects as economic boons that will bring in high-paying jobs, increased tax revenue, and essential grid improvements.
Until our unemployment rate is zero, we want a job for everyone in Luzerne County who wants a job. We want those jobs to pay family-sustaining wages.
Most of the upsides that they try and say are like living wage jobs, but we know that's kind of a farce. We also know that it doesn't even produce that many jobs. Beyond the initial construction efforts, there won't be long-term jobs for people.
The economic benefit of data centers is frequently criticized for failing to deliver significant long-term value. While construction offers temporary employment, a recent Good Jobs First study confirmed that states receive few permanent well-paid jobs in return for the billions in tax breaks offered to attract these facilities.
And I think that that's the very crux of the matter. We have nothing to compare this against. The promises that they're making are really not quantifiable. They aren't based in any kind of true historical context. It's, speculative numbers, it's their hopes and dreams, it's their best case scenario, and it may or may not be rooted in reality.
Now, these residents are banding together to stop these projects, and they're finding success. Local opposition in Hampton Township forced officials to block data center development in office parks. In Lackawanna County, developers abandoned their plans entirely following sustained community protests. And in a decisive move, Hazel Township supervisors unanimously rejected a proposal for a colossal 1,280-acre data center campus in the area. Officials in Dorrance Township are amending zoning ordinances to regulate data centers before any land use proposals are formally submitted. We go back to IBD's Claire O'Connor in Pennsylvania.
In Luzerne County, the signs show residents pushing back against power lines, data centers, and disruption. But a few miles down the road here in Dorrance, Pennsylvania, these signs tell a different story. Residents aren't just fighting to keep the power lines out, they also want to keep the data centers themselves out of their backyard.
My children were all born and raised here. And you can see it's a quiet rural community. All the neighbors know each other. We all get along and help one another. We don't want to see this happen to destroy this area.
Dan Eustace has spent 5 decades on his family's land, and he says the proposed data center would disrupt his farm and put longtime residents at risk of losing their property.
And they're going to use eminent domain to take people's land. It's not right either. We're the little guys. We don't have the money to fight these people. They have all the money in the world, and they want to put it here. It doesn't belong here.
Dorrance is embroiled in the data center debate. In September, town supervisors unanimously voted to amend zoning laws to restrict data centers. Now, a developer is challenging those changes, claiming they unlawfully exclude data centers as legitimate land uses under Pennsylvania law. And what is sort of the temperature in the community right now with everything going on with the possible build of that data center?
Well, see, I think a lot of the people are ignorant to the fact of what this is going to do to them. Where this data center is proposed, there's no on-site water. So they would have to drill a well, and that could deplete our wells. So our wells could go dry because if they get in the same aquifer, which they will, and minimum, they use 50,000 to 300,000 gallons a day. Some of them, depending, use up to 1 million gallons a day. This aquifer can't withstand that. And again, why should our lives be disrupted and our quality of life have to change for a billionaire company?
And back in Sugarloaf, Annie Vinatieri says the data center issue is uniting the town across the left and the right.
In my many years of community involvement throughout the region, I have never seen this level of engagement, of frustration, of mobilization. So it's unparalleled, truly unparalleled.
With electricity rates soaring nationwide, candidates from both parties are finding a winning platform in targeting utilities and big tech. Just look at Virginia, the world's largest data center hub, saw the issue become a major factor in the governor's race in November when Democrat Abigail Spanberger won by pledging to prioritize affordable energy and hold large power consumers accountable.
I will ensure that data centers pay their fair share.
Down south in the swing state of Florida, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis has put forward an AI Bill of Rights.
We're going to protect local control to ensure and codify that local governments have the right to reject the construction of a hyperscale data center.
The proposed legislation provides significant consumer protections, including measures that prohibit electric companies from charging Florida residents more to support data center development. In fact, some 20 states have already introduced legislation targeting utility rates, energy, and water usage, and investors can expect data centers to be a hot-button issue in the upcoming midterm elections. Back in Pennsylvania, the Alliance to Stop the Line is fighting HB 502, a fast-tracked bill that would revoke local government's authority to slow, deny, or apply restrictions to energy projects in their own communities.
when you come for people's quality of life, when you come for their pocketbook and them being able to afford food on the table or have to pay an increasing utility bill or something like that, yeah, absolutely, it's a great equalizer. And so I think, if I were an investor, I'd be very nervous about what's going on across America, because this isn't just a class warfare type thing. This is really everyone saying, hold on, we smell a rat. This needs to be done the right way.
The White House is moving to check state power on AI legislation. On December 11th, President Trump signed an executive order which essentially punishes states that pass what he calls onerous legislation. The order establishes a new Justice Department task force to legally challenge state AI laws and includes a mandate to restrict federal broadband funding for non-compliant states. Now, for their part, tech giants say they're working to make data centers a win-win situation. Companies that can secure their own energy by building their own power generation facilities or by entering partnerships with high-demand power users like cryptocurrency miners have an early competitive edge.
For many of the largest data center providers, they're often putting multiple bets. They have multiple locations they're looking for, knowing that not all of those will come to fruition, and so they're sort of working through that.
That's Aaron Denman, leader of Bain's America's Utilities and Renewables practice. He says an emerging solution may be higher targeted electricity rates for data centers. This shifts power and infrastructure costs to high energy users, helping states maintain grid stability while accommodating industrial growth.
Customer affordability has always been a critical challenge for utilities to navigate. And so I think that is the paramount issue that they're sort of facing.
Denman says utilities are employing a whole host of strategies to make sure high power users are paying their fair share. This includes creating new rate classes for large load customers, requiring upfront payments for new infrastructure, instituting monthly minimum payments, and enforcing early termination fees if the hyperscaler exits the contract before the end of the term.
I think it still comes down to power availability. I think this is why the data center providers are sort of on the hunt, if you will, for where they can get land access, water access, power access, just because the system, does have some constraints in places.
These constraints are forcing the AI industry to pursue alternative strategies for computing power. Hyperscalers are also turning to Bitcoin mining operations like Iron, TeraWulf, and Core Scientific for a little juice.
Yeah, the best way to think about Bitcoin mining facilities is that we are essentially powered shells to the data center industry.
These miners already possess crucial assets, pre-existing electricity contracts and grid connections. This not only drastically reduces the time to bring new data centers online, but it also helps AI developers bypass new regulatory hurdles and community concerns over spiking electricity rates. The massive demand for reliable, carbon-free power is also fueling a major resurgence in nuclear energy. This trend has fueled massive investor interest, with nuclear-focused energy stocks like Constellation Energy and Vistra near the top of S&P 500 performers throughout 2024 and 2025. While nuclear power is gaining momentum, other energy sources remain critical. Natural gas projects are favored for their speed of deployment, and renewables like wind and solar will also remain crucial components fuel the AI boom.
We're seeing much more creativity. I think, if anything, the constraints that we're seeing in the market means that folks, all of the stakeholders involved, whether it's regulators, utilities, the data center providers, startups, are coming up with very innovative solutions to try and minimize the burden that we see currently.
These solutions will be critical. As persistent inflation and widespread affordability crises continue, experts warn that the political backlash will only intensify if spikes in electricity prices are not controlled. But Denman warns of a much greater risk.
I think first and foremost, if we can't figure this out, those data center providers, those hyperscalers, are going to look for where they can get power access. And so if that doesn't mean the US, it will mean, other geographies kind of around the world. But if we can't build the power, I think we sort of risk losing the economic impact to other parts of the world, and we put some national security risk.
The economic impact of data centers cannot be overstated. U.S. GDP growth in the first half of 2025 was largely driven by investment in data centers and AI-related technology. Denman views the current headwinds as the predictable growing pains of a hyper-accelerating market.
I think you're sort of seeing the kind of natural evolution of a market that's maturing in real time, which is happening much faster than I think other markets have had to go through.
But for local activists like John Zola, the issue isn't about market evolution. It's about protecting the community.
If you don't fight now and slow this train down, once the damage is done, it is too late. It's too late then. People have to really stand up and say, enough is enough.